Well, welcome to Whole Bible Study with your host, me, Tad Inoue. In the last episode, we looked at Numbers chapter 1. It seemed like a census, but it was more than that. It was about identity. Each tribe was counted, named, and given a place in God's story. Now, in chapter 2, we move from counting to arranging. God gives instructions about where each tribe is to camp around the sacred tent, the tabernacle. At first, it looks like a simple camp layout, tents, flags, directions, but something deeper is actually happening here, something spiritual. The layout tells a story. It asks a question. Does God care where we stand? Before we begin, remember the full live reading of this chapter is on my Bible Building podcast my last episode, episode 15, part of the Numbers playlist on YouTube. I used to record those readings on camera live, but these episodes are now focused on deep study. So if you'd like to hear the chapter read aloud, it's all there. Chapter 2 describes how the tribes of Israel are to set up their camp around the Mishkan, God's dwelling place. The Hebrew word Mishkan comes from shakhan, which means to dwell. From this same root, Shekhinah, the word used for the visible presence of God. So when God gives detailed instructions here, He's not organizing a camp. He's not organizing a campsite. He's teaching His people how to live with Him at the center. The chapter opens, the Israelites shall camp each by his own standard with the banners of their fathers' houses. They shall camp facing the tent of meeting on every side. The word for standard is degel, meaning flag or banner. Jewish tradition holds that each tribe had its own flag with a unique color and emblem. Judah had a lion on a blue sky. Reuben had mandrakes on red. Ephraim had an ox on black. And Dan, an eagle on sapphire. These details come from Bamidbar Rabbah, a rabbinic commentary on Numbers, which imagined the camp as a reflection of the heavens, a kind of earthly constellation. At the center was the Mishkan. Around it stood the Levites, and beyond them, the 12 tribes camped in 4 groups of 3. To the east, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. To the south, Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. To the west, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. To the north, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Judah's camp was the largest, and whenever the nation moved, they went in that same order. Judah led first, then Reuben, followed by the Levites carrying the tabernacle, then Ephraim, and finally Dan at the rear. Jacob Milgrom, a leading scholar of Leviticus and Numbers, noted that this camp layout mirrors ancient Near Eastern military formations. In those, the king's tent sat in the center of the army, but here the center belongs not to a human king, but to God Himself. That changes everything. The center isn't about control or power, it's about presence. The tabernacle becomes the heart of the nation, and holiness flows outward from it. The rabbis noticed something else. The 4-sided structure reflects the vision of angels in Ezekiel, each facing a different direction, surrounding God's throne. Judah, camped on the east side, faced the rising sun, and in ancient thought, the east symbolized beginnings, light and life. Even today, Jewish tradition often prays facing east. Early Christian thinkers like Gregory of Nyssa said that divine order isn't about control, but rhythm. And this camp is rhythm you can see. Why does it matter? Isn't faith about the heart? Well, not where you pitch a tent, maybe. But in the wilderness, But in the wilderness, no one turned their back to the center. The Hebrew word used here implies orientation, alignment. Each family, each flag, each tribe was aligned toward God's presence. Richard Rohr says the spiritual life is the art of recentering. That's what it is. The people's geography became their worship. And when the cloud lifted and the people moved, they marched in that same order. Judah led first. That's not random. Judah's name means praise, from the root yada. Worship went before everything else. Origen of Alexandria saw this layout as symbolic of the soul. He said that our thoughts, feelings, and actions need to be arranged around God, just as the tribes were. When our inner life is disordered, we fall into confusion. And when it's centered, we find communion. And the archaeological record backs this up. Many nomadic groups in Sinai and Transjordan set up camps in rings with the chief or shrine at the center. Numbers takes this familiar pattern and rewrites it. The center no longer belongs to the leader. It belongs to God. The shape of power is turned into the shape of holiness. The rabbis wondered why the tribes were arranged in this order. Their answer pointed back to the blessings of Jacob and Moses. Judah was given kingship, so he led. Reuben, though the firstborn, had failed in the past, so he lost his lead position. Placed closest to the Levites, who stood with Moses during the golden calf crisis, were placed closest to the sanctuary. Every tribe's place told a story of calling, failure, and redemption. Modern scholars like James Vanderkam and George Nicholsberg note that this reflects the priestly tradition in the Torah. For the priestly authors, holiness is structure. It's not chaos. It moves outward in circles. Holy, less holy, ordinary. The camp becomes a living diagram of that theology. But boundaries in Scripture are not about exclusion. They define relationship. Israel's camp was not ranked from best to worst. It was arranged around purpose. Judah led with praise. Dan guarded the rear. The Levites protected the holy things. Everyone had a role. Every place mattered. Elaine Pagels once wrote that that structure in worship is not just organization, it's formation. That's what we see here. The people aren't just organized. They are formed into a visible image of God's order. Even in the desert where everything seems random, God brings form. The tribes don't camp in chaos. They gather in harmony and the center holds. And this idea echoed through history. The Qumran community, the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, described themselves as a living temple. Each person stood in a set place, forming a sanctuary made of people. Paul used the same idea in 1 Corinthians, calling the church noasteo, the temple of God. The geometry of holiness moved from tents to hearts. Numbers 2 might seem like just another list, but it's more like a soul map. It tells us that holiness and order go hand in hand. David Bentley Hart says that sin is disorientation, losing our sense of center. Salvation is being turned back towards what is most true. That's what Israel practiced daily. They woke up, stepped out of their tents, and faced the presence of God. And those banners, they mattered too. Each tribe had its own color, its own symbol. The rabbis said that the camp looked like a rainbow. Many voices, one covenant. Diversity didn't break unity. It made it beautiful. God cared where they stood, not because he needed it, but because they did. Alignment wasn't control, it was relationship. Brian Zahnd once said that faith is not the absence of structure, it's sacred orientation. That could sum up the whole chapter. Israel didn't camp facing their fears or their enemies. They camped facing the presence. And every morning the sun rose over Judah's camp, shining first on the tabernacle, then reaching out across the tribes. It was a living sermon. Light begins at the center and spreads outward. Hans Urs von Balthasar said that beauty is the form of the good. That's what this chapter shows. God brings beauty through structure. His presence doesn't float above the wilderness. It shapes it. So does God care where we stand? Yes, because where we stand shapes what we face. And what we face shapes what we become. God's presence gives us order to our wandering, form to our days, and centers our lives around what is most real. In the wilderness, order wasn't comfort. It was communion. Israel learned that even in the dry places, they could live in harmony if they faced the center together. Their tents made a map of belonging, and at the heart of it, God dwelt among them. Well, thank you for joining me for this exploration of Numbers chapter 2. If this speaks to you, share it with a friend, or leave a comment. Whole Bible Study is a part of Mustard Seed Ministries, and your support on Patreon keeps these episodes and Bible building podcasts going. Grace and peace to you, wherever you stand. May your life, like Israel's camp, be centered on the presence that holds all things together. And we'll see you in the next chapter tomorrow.